for us, like, I would rather make no money on Herd and know that I did what was right and what was good for people than say, I don't give a crap about anyone but myself. And of course, if we wanted that, we could pull the levers, right? Like, we know what makes something addictive. And I really do hope that the next generation of innovators and founders, first off, says F the status quo. And even if this space is dominated by a few players, there's room for innovation. And I'm going to go after that innovation.
In 1837, Horace Mann created the education system, a system at the time designed to pump out factory workers and professors. The same system that is still being used today in the 21st century. Now, Mann's system is backfiring. We are being moulded by the same industrial system that has existed for close to 200 years. That system delivers us into a digital economy that has no need of our outdated skills. This isn't our teachers' fault. This isn't the government's fault. This is due to a rapidly changing world full of technology and unforeseen circumstances. And us Gen Zs are caught in the middle. Welcome to the Driven Young podcast, the podcast for stressed, overwhelmed young Australians, teaching you practical life skills you can implement now to set yourself up in life. And now your host, Byron Dempsey.
Welcome back to the Driven Young podcast, and today I am joined by Maddie and Ali, the creators of the Herdapp. You may have seen these two girls on TikTok. They are based in the US and have created a new social media app for Gen Z. Herd is a social space focused on community over comparison. By throwing out the social scale, empowering casual creativity, and providing experience autonomy, Herd aims to restore authentic expression. In an ecosystem that deprioritizes user well-being, Herd is a greener pasture, grown from honesty, empathy, respect, and discovery. I have been following these two online for a while now. I always read the comments on their videos, and it is incredible what they've been able to achieve. The startup space is unbelievably difficult, especially for young women, as you'll hear us discuss. It is even more difficult when you're creating a new social media platform to contend with companies like Instagram. In this episode, we talk about all things social media, why it's so addictive and harmful, the good and the bad, how to manage your relationship with it, how companies like Instagram are heading in the wrong direction, how the girls were able to start this company and the struggles they faced, and much, much more. As per usual, please DM myself on Instagram, DM Maddie and Ali on Instagram too if you enjoy this episode. I'm sure they would love that. Please leave a review on Apple Podcasts. I'd really appreciate that. All the links you need will be in the show notes below. Now, over to Maddie and Ali. Girls, welcome so much to the podcast. Really excited to have you on.
We're so excited to be here. Thank you for having us. The power of TikTok.
I know.
Yeah, it's actually such a great little networking tool as well, because you can only message people that follow each other. So it's not your message feeds aren't full of like hundreds and hundreds of DMs.
Right. Yeah, it definitely helps.
Yeah.
I think we just watched your video one day and we were like, you're amazing.
Yeah.
And so it always is nice when you like get that follow back or vice versa. It's really fun.
It's such a cool feeling, and I've been following you guys for a while. I can't remember when I probably saw one of your first viral videos when you were like just talking about the concept before it was all put together. And I'm such a big fan of what you've created. So did you just want to tell us like real quick a little bit about each of your personal stories? I guess maybe how you met and why you're creating this app.
Yeah. You want me to go?
Yeah, go for it. Take it away.
So we met back in college. It's kind of a funny story, but we met back in college, weren't super close friends, kind of just ran in different circles, but had an overlap with some of
with our ex-boyfriend. My now boyfriend again. It's a long story, like we said.
Long story. We don't need to get into all that, but we always were like, oh, like Maddie's so cool. Love hanging out with Maddie, and vice versa as well. But we didn't really become super close till we both moved to Seattle randomly 2 years after graduating, within 2 weeks of one another, within like a 5-minute distance of like walking distance in Seattle. So we just randomly were in like the exact same place at the exact same time. We went on one, I guess, like friend date, and we're like, all right, this is it. We're best friends now. Like this is the end. So that's really how the whole story kind of started. And that's, just like our
what is it called? The meet cute?
Meet cute, yeah.
That's definitely it. So for Herd, we both grew up as teenagers on the internet. but we're at this weird time where we were 15 when Instagram really started to gain some traction. So we recognized and remembered a little bit of our teenage years without social media, and then very quickly adapted and grew up alongside it and watched how it not only impacted our view on ourselves, but our relationships, our idea of what community and influence and power looks like. And as the pandemic hit, we were living in Seattle, feeling super isolated, trying to use the networks that were promising community and connection as a way to reconnect with people that were far away. But the more time we spent on these platforms, the less connected we felt. We felt more isolated, more mentally unwell. And this correlation between an increased time on platform and a decrease in your mental health and well-being is not something that we were just experiencing. There's endless research that shows that that's normal. And when you look at the solution to that problem, because as friends, we're like, we need to not have this in our lives. How do we get over this? There's no middle ground. It is like, quit it cold turkey, remove it from your day, from your life, from your morning routine. And for an industry that was largely shaped by, I would say Facebook was a big creator in what the ecosystem looks like, that's been around for over 10 years. And there's been no real innovation in the space that makes us rethink that feedback loop. And for us, it was like, well, we can do it better. We know what's good at this point. There's enough research to know what's good, to know what's bad. Let's redesign for that.
I love the point you made that. So how old are you guys, by the way?
I'm 24, Ali's 25.
Okay, yeah. So, I mean, I'm 23, so we both had the same similar experience with social media. I love the point that you made that you recognized life before social media and life after social media. And so we can kind of go, oh, I can see a difference. And my biggest worry is that the next generations aren't going to experience that. It's just going to be normal their entire life. And so they're not going to be able to disassociate what life was like before social media like we can. And that's where it's like, this is going to be potentially catastrophic for people's mental health for the next generations.
Oh, 100%. And that's something that scares us, thinking about the future and thinking what will happen if we keep going down this path, because social media is an addiction. We are addicted to it. We're addicted to our phones. And we, like Maddie said, we know the research behind it. There's been years of studies on it, but nothing has changed because these platforms are making incredible amounts of money and don't want to change.
Yeah. And I think like what's really sad is because it's such a big part of just community and our identity in society, going away from that is really difficult. But when you are older and in the space to look at the industry, it's terrifying, because as two people that are going and talking to older people in the space and trying to like show them the idea and why Herd should exist, the mindset around social and what makes a good social platform is so distorted from like humans and what makes humans connected. It's all about being a painkiller and being something that just at whatever cost increases screen time. And we've lost touch with society at large.
That's exactly. I think we're at a point where there's so much competition happening on social media that companies are more likely to do unethical things to keep us on the platforms in order to compete with the amount of competition that's happening. And that's what we're seeing. Like, I'm sure you've seen the documentary, The Social Dilemma, where they talk about like how we're competing with like supercomputers and they time everything, and notifications happen at all these certain times. Like, I'm super diligent with my phone because it's so addicting. And like TikTok is probably like the cherry on the cake in terms of addiction. It is crazy addicting. And I think it's really cool the way you've been able to promote the business by doing it. And I guess this app is for Gen Zs, correct?
Yeah, we're really trying to focus on the group that has not known a life without social media.
And I think you've done that in an incredible way by using essentially a Gen Z platform and relating to them. And so you've kind of built up the need in the market, and then you've created the platform instead of going, hey, let's make this platform and then market it. How's that been? Like, did you guys plan to make it the whole time, or did you just kind of start putting out content?
Yeah, well, I think something for us that was really important is we knew we needed to meet our target audience where they were at, and that was on TikTok. And Maddie had made a video on her personal TikTok page, which she had a following on, which maybe was that early video you saw where we were just kind of talking about the idea. We didn't have a full-fledged app yet. And that did go viral and saw a lot of traction, and honestly was a lot of momentum and motivation for us to say, okay, it's not just us feeling this way. There are, I don't even know how many views or whatever that video had, but there are hundreds of thousands of other people that also feel this way and are asking when they can download this app. We better keep going. We better turn this into a reality.
Yeah. And I think in our eyes, we want her to be something where people can truly and authentically show up as they are and create content they want to see. And when you look at like the handbook on how to market a startup, it's definitely not two founders randomly making videos, kind of unscripted, talking about why they're passionate about it and being just more creative and having no rules or no content strategy. But we knew that if we wanted to set that tone, like we needed to approach it as real people. Yeah. And we also need to make people aware of the problem. I think it's so easy to just unconsciously consume content and then years pass and you're like, I've spent so much of my time and so much of my identity is wrapped up in this thing. And for us, we want and we know that Gen Z cares deeply about wellness and authenticity. And so it's like getting them just those little kind of inklings and understandings of why they're feeling the way that they're feeling, why these platforms cause them to feel that way, so that when we come with the solution, it's a no-brainer. Like it's something that you want to make yourself feel better, and you recognize that these current platforms are not doing that.
And I think the point you made earlier on, like you can either go cold turkey or have Instagram and Facebook. That's kind of the really two only options. And I guess you guys are trying to create something that sits in between. It's like you don't have to go cold turkey. You can still have that dopamine hit and still connect with people, but you don't have to have the toxic side of likes and everything. Like, is that kind of what you're trying to achieve there?
Yeah, we're really trying to pioneer a new category called social wellness, where you still have the ability to post what you want to post, show up as you are, connect and build community with others, but in a way that is benefiting your life, benefiting your well-being, and adding to your life as a vitamin and not a painkiller.
Yeah, and to just kind of like echo on that, I think we see right now on platforms, I'm sure you've been on the side of TikTok, where it's like, this is a rest stop, like this is a social rest stop, and like calm music. And so we want to be that rest stop for people who need to recoup. And over time, we hope that we're able to help curb the addiction and recognize that you come onto Herd. You're in control of the time you spend on the platform and how you spend your time, and you leave feeling better. And that's going to take time to break down the habits of a quick dopamine hit from addiction. But we think that in the long term, establishing intentional, healthy daily habits will win in the long term.
Yeah, for sure. Do you think, because I'd love to go back into the conversation around with young people, because I see so much stuff on TikTok, like, and I've put out content saying we need to be careful with our phones, and people just call you like a boomer, and they're just like, no, I'm most happiest when I'm on TikTok. And I'm like, oh my God. It's like, it's almost like a lot of young people don't want this, and it feels like you're fighting. Do you guys find that? Do you find it difficult? You almost have to force this stuff down people's throat, and then some people adopt it with like, happiness, and they just want to take it on.
I'd say yes and no. There's definitely a mix of, I mean, we're lucky enough that the people who do watch our content are those who resonate with it and actively are seeking for somewhere else, because they are feeling like social media is so toxic, and they want to find that place that is that kind of middle ground in between deleting all apps and still having a place where they can express themselves and show up as they are.
Yeah, it's meeting someone where they're at on their wellness journey. Mm-hmm. Like, I think the approach for the people we're talking to now is probably going to be very different than the approach we take 5 years from now when we're talking to someone who's at a different point in their journey. But our whole thing is herd might not be for everyone right now, but in the long run, it will be a place where we hope everyone feels supported. And we can't expect everyone to get it now. I think when you talk about like, oh, the boomer, this and that, of course, I think it's easy to feel like the nagging parent when you're talking about digital and social wellness because we are addicted. And so it's like taking someone's vice away from them. But how we like to think about it is we are not saying that you have to cold turkey get rid of this. We are saying those things that you love when you talk about social media, you talk about loving creating, you talk about loving connection, you talk about loving community. At its core, these platforms are not that. And so you can keep trying to get that feeling from these platforms, but actually what you're just getting is a dopamine hit from other parts of the platform. So when you're really looking for that truly at its core, you're going to want to go to a platform that's metric free, that's built on that type of usage. And so it's just educating those different points.
Yeah, and I think it's like if you look at platforms like Instagram, which have just done all these crazy updates, like they're clearly just becoming a commercial platform. Everything they want is, they've got the shop feature at the bottom. I've never used that. They just copy other features from other platforms. Facebook is, essentially dead for younger people. I think TikTok is, an incredible platform, but there's not much community. It's really just entertainment.
Yeah, 100%. I think it's interesting to see Instagram and how the direction they've taken because they for so long were like photo sharing, being creative. Everyone's empowered to be a creator because everyone has access to a camera in their fingers. And like, that's definitely not the direction they've gone. And it's hard to watch because I think a lot of that in our eyes comes from the fact that they run on an attention driven system. It's all about watch time. And so of course they're inherently going to put more ads when they're trying to just get you on. That's how they make money. But I think it's also interesting to watch the lack of innovation in the space because it really is just copy and paste from other big players in the space. And it's because they're so big at this point. I think they feel like too big to be overtaken. And so it's really easy as an innovator to like not even think of social as a place to spend your energy because the people that are dominating the space are dominating it so aggressively.
Yeah.
And it's sad to watch happen.
Yeah. We definitely got some, I don't want to say like eyes thrown at us, but like we're definitely called crazy for like, why would you even try to
enter into photo sharing?
Yeah. Enter into photo sharing. And our whole thing from the beginning was we don't think it's fully been done right. We see an opportunity there, and that's why we want her to be a photo sharing app first before anything else.
Well, do you know why I think you guys will succeed at this? Have you seen Simon Sinek Start with Why? Do you know that whole thing? It's like you guys are starting with why. Like, you're not people in the startup will be going, how are you going to monetize it? How are you going to do all this stuff? It's like, who cares? We're doing this for a reason. Even if it only gets, 100,000 users, which by the way is huge or something, or whatever number. It's like, we're not trying to compete with Instagram. We're trying to just create something where people can have this. We don't care so much about making billions of dollars. And that's where I think the next generation of companies really need to be heading, because I think we're all burnt out from like corporations like Instagram and Facebook who just bully other companies into like either collapsing or absorb them. And I'm personally sick of it. I don't know how you guys feel.
Oh, yeah. It's really amazing that just on this journey, kind of going off of your point of rooting in your why, is that we have been lucky enough to have a lot of investors behind us that do believe in the why and believe in our mission and vision for the future. But it's interesting because we've had a lot of conversations with different investors, and you can really tell the ones that are just trying to pattern match and trying to make money quickly and just want to know how you're monetizing, versus the ones that really believe in that vision, because they don't start their questions with, okay, so how are you going to make me money?
Mm-hmm. And it's for us, like, I would rather make no money on herd and know that I did what was right and what was good for people than say, I don't give a crap about anyone but myself. And of course, if we wanted that, we could pull the levers, right? Like we know what makes something addictive. And I really do hope that the next generation of innovators and founders, first off, says F the status quo. And even if this space is dominated by a few players, there's room for innovation. And I'm going to go after that innovation. And I hope that we're more generous with the outcome of that. Like, to me, it's really hard to watch, as someone who worked at a big tech company prior to us doing Herd, it's really hard and sad to watch people in positions of power and how disconnected they are with the everyday person. And I never want to be that. I think like we're both clear on the fact that if that at the end of the day is what happens, like that will not be success for us.
Exactly, because, and that's a whole nother conversation, but success is such a subjective word. You know, success is different for everyone. And while the world kind of sees success as monetary more often than not, I think it's really got to be, are you know, happy internally? And if you're, you know, as you mentioned, disconnected from the everyday person, you're, you know, pulling these levers metaphorically, so to speak, then you're not going to be successful.
Right. Yeah, exactly. But it's holding on to that even in the face of, you know, so many people in the space who
telling you it has to be
the way it always has been.
Yeah.
Agreed.
And that is definitely something I'd love to go into as, you know, two young women in this, I guess, traditionally male dominated space. And you're going against the status quo. Like that alone is an awesome story. How have you found that? Like, what was the journey like starting for you? Have you had a lot of people tell you this is pointless? Have you said like, no, you've got to do this, you've got to monetize it? What's the whole kind of journey been like for you guys?
It's been a mix over time, I would say. I think we've gotten more firm in our vision and clearly and explicitly stating that from the start of the world that we see. I think going into it, you're like, okay, I'm going to, you know, package this up in the most easy to digest way. And that's not always saying like your craziest idea. And so it was easy for us to fall into conversations that weren't mission aligned. And therefore we got the questions that were not the questions we wanted to get around how quickly are you going to monetize and how are you going to get this to as many people as possible at whatever cost. But over time, I think we've gotten really lucky to understand the types of people that we want behind us. But there's no lying that the VC space in particular for women is extremely difficult. 2.2% of VC funds went to women last year, and you cannot tell me.
Oh my God.
Yeah, no, it's
absolutely ridiculous that is
wow.
A stat. Yeah, and it went down. Like it went down year over year. I think it was at like 4% the year prior.
Yeah.
And so you cannot tell me that 98% of the good ideas are coming from them. And then even worse, when they do get funding, women businesses often get undervalued. And the questions that women are asked in the process are extremely demeaning. Now where we're at, we feel like we are getting a better reaction. But it took, 100 bad conversations to get to the few good ones we've had, and a lot of tears and a lot of moments where I thought we were just going to stop, because as much as you want to pour everything into it, you also do need people supporting you financially to get your feet off the ground with a tech startup. And so it's been a journey, growing process.
Yeah,
for sure.
It's definitely been an uphill climb, but we're still climbing.
Yeah. But it's honestly so inspiring. Like, I know how difficult that space is, and like a social media app, it's such a difficult thing to tackle, let alone your age and gender as well, to add on top of that. Like, it's honestly so inspiring. I think so long as you guys focus on the vision and like just think about the people you can impact, like you guys can have such a huge impact with this app. I know most of my listeners are female, so I'm sure they're going to love this episode. But it's just, I don't know, because I'm similar. Like, I don't make much money from this. I've been full-time, but I'm living off a lot of savings, and I have sponsorships here and there, and I'm working on a whole bunch of other projects, but it's always just going back to, why am I doing this? And I think so long as that is strong, you can kind of push through so much more than what you'd be able to push through if it was just financial gains.
Yeah, 100%.
Definitely.
Yeah, there's no way if we were doing this for money that we would still be doing it. Like, there's just no way it would actually be worth it enough, I think, for us to to keep fighting.
Yeah. I mean, we both left our full-time jobs, and that was a huge leap just because we
didn't come from a
from
safety net. Like, I think
Yeah.
that's also another layer that
Yeah.
isn't often talked about
Yeah,
in
like
the space.
we definitely worked hard to get to the positions we were at before leaving, and so letting that go was definitely a big leap for both of us. And yeah, a lot of other founders come from, I mean, I don't want to generalize, but it's known that they do come from a more privileged background, so they have more of a safety net to fall back on, say their startup doesn't work out the way they want it to.
But you know what? And I'll share a little story because, first of all, everyone loves an underdog story. So, number one. Number two, there was a kid in 1999. There was a kid in Australia who was 15 years old, and he was the youngest person to ever sail around the world solo. He left like Melbourne, and it took about 11 months. He sailed around the world, and he got interviewed in his book. And one of the questions he got asked was, "How were you able to do this? Why didn't you give up?" And one of the answers he said was, "I did give up. I gave up multiple times, but the problem was I was 3 weeks from land in any direction. Therefore, I'd start heading towards land. Dolphins would jump out of the water. The sun would come out, and I'd feel good again." And he said one of the reasons he was able to succeed at this venture was because he gave himself no exits. And so, by having no exits, it means you're fully in, and you can't afford to fail, which means you guys are going to be more committed.
Yeah. What is that story? There was some story about like burning boats. I'm butchering this, but some person like burned boats or something, so they couldn't turn back. They like had to keep going forward. So yeah, definitely. I feel like putting your full energy towards something is just so different than having one foot in the door and one foot out the door.
Yeah.
Yeah, amazing. Well, let's keep talking about this, but before I do, and I might edit this into the earlier, did you want to pitch me Herd? Like, what is Herd? I actually haven't been able to use it because it's not in Australia yet, so I haven't seen what it's like. How's it going? Like, what is this app that you guys have created?
Yeah. So Herd is based in photo sharing, but we really hope that it becomes a community platform where people are able to create authentically without worrying about what other people think, and easily connect based on mutual interests and photos that they love to see on their feed. So right now, how that looks is 4 parts. We have a homepage that has a journal question every single day that you can answer and then connect with other people based on their answer to that same question. We have a feed where you can post into a category, and then as a consumer of the content, toggle up and down what content you want to see. So if one day I want to see all animal content, I can do that. If the next day I want to see no relationship content, I can do that. There's no intense algorithm looking at all of my engagement and deciphering for me. You really have control. And then, like any other real platform, there's a profile where you're kind of having that collection. And we also do have a favorite section, so you're able to save things from the feed. But in this next wave of development, we're going to be focusing on how do we connect people based on interests that they've identified, make it easy for them to see what they have in common on multiple levels, and then allow them to facilitate deeper conversations based on that mutual interest.
Amazing. Anything to add?
I was just going to say we're not in Australia yet, but we do have a wait list on our website for priority access if you want to sign up.
Yeah, we're just a 3-person team. We're just 3 people right now, and so time zone wise, it would be really tough for us to do that. So we're just holding off. We're hoping to start expanding globally in the next few months here, so long as we hire additional development talent.
Oh yeah, look, no rush. I totally understand how much work is going into that. So it's like, no pressure. And so first of all, that's like, it's so cool, like the journal feature and all that stuff. Am I safe to assume you've removed likes and followers, or do you still have that?
Not.
So there's no follower count. You can still add people to your herd, which is essentially following, but there's no number associated with it. On your profile, there's a split view of your private profile. So essentially, I can't go to Maddie's profile and stalk her whole entire life and compare my photos and my life to her, all of everything that she's posted. But there is a public view where you can post like your top 15 photos that you want others to see to give a background of who you are. And then, like you said, yeah, there's no like count. So instead we have emotions-based feedback, which we call feels. So essentially, if Maddie posted a photo and it was a cute photo of her dancing in the rain. Yeah, dancing in the rain. I was like, this photo made me feel empowered. I can leave that feedback to her, and it's shared with her as a percentage. The most popular feel is shared with her after 24 hours. So she'll be able to see, all right, this photo made the majority of other users on Herd feel empowered or happy or whatever it might be. So we hope that not only is that creating a more intentional interaction for those viewing the photo, but also the way it's shared is, instead of, comparing this photo got 20 likes, this photo got 100, you're able to see that as a percentage out of 100%.
Yeah. And we also have things that are like kind of small, but really meaningful to us, like our daily affirmation. So every day at 11:11, we send out a positive affirmation. And so that just hoping that when you're on your phone at whatever part in your journey of your day, you're still getting that message and that uplifting energy. And then if you do come on to Herd from that notification, you're coming with that mindset already. So we plan to continue to add in these things, but from a baseline, yeah, we've removed every piece of design that's inherently addictive or toxic. So there's also no poll to refresh, just little things that you wouldn't think of. We've excluded from our platform.
Yeah, amazing. I think it's such a great idea. I think it's almost removing the ego from the platform.
Yeah, that's a good way.
That's a great way of putting it. Yeah, love that.
Because why do so many people love growing on Instagram? It's just ego. It's like I'd be interested to hear your feedback. I remember seeing someone would you rather have a following on TikTok or Instagram? And I was just like, oh, that's a good one, because I know it's way harder to grow a following on Instagram. So my ego was like, oh, Instagram. But then I'm like, well, actually, for me, TikTok is a way better place to actually get my content viewed and get my educational stuff out there. And so TikTok is actually probably better, even though my ego was like, I'd love to have followers on Instagram. What would you choose? What do you think about that?
Oh, we could get into the whole higher conversation about ego and power. We talk about this a lot. But yeah, I think basically because we've grown up in this world, followers equal power. Yeah. Digital power. Yeah. We grasp for power in society, whether that's financial power or a title that makes you powerful. And so social media opened up a whole new playing field of power. And in this game of social power, Instagram carries more weight, I would say, because of its long-lasting brand and because you can't go viral overnight, so it feels harder. And so that's a whole trip, I think, in general. And the weight we've put behind a blue check and making you influential, even though everyone has their own ability to influence. So for me, to answer your question, I actually think that TikTok is a place where, even though it has a lot of flaws from a consumer perspective, like the tactics that they use to keep you on the platform, I will say because the overlap is so strong in their system, I feel like I'm connected to a bunch of people who I don't know in real life that I actually could become friends with in real life. And I love that element of it. So I would rather have that, but I would rather have followers that I felt were actually people that understood me authentically versus having a following, if that makes sense. I've never that.
That's a hard question. And I think for me, it comes down to, I know you just gave such a deep and insightful answer. For me, I think it comes down to just what I like creating more of. I'm definitely more of I'm definitely more of a photo person. I love taking photos. One of my best friends is a photographer, so I just really grew up taking photos with her, and it's just something that brings me a lot of joy. I'm less good at making videos, so it comes down to that. But I also hate posting on Instagram. It's so cringy to me, and there's just so much pressure around it. So from a content creation standpoint, would probably be Instagram, just because I love taking photos and posting photos, but this is the pressure behind Instagram I don't love. Yeah.
Did you guys find I know it's probably less pressure now, but I remember back in high school and I personally didn't have it too much, but like my girlfriends would talk about like, oh, I have to post between 6 p.m. and 7 p.m. and I'm going to post at this specific content because it fits within the feed. And hopefully I want to get this many likes. And people will like take down photos or archive them if they don't hit a certain amount of likes in a certain amount of time. And it's like they somehow can't see what's wrong with that. And it's like, that is so toxic.
So
right.
toxic.
Well, it's like, I think it's, from my perspective, if it's becomes a place where it's like almost like your curated art gallery and that's how we're viewing it, then that's a different story. But we've for so long been like, this is who I am, this is my identity, this is me as a person.
If I don't get enough likes, I'm not good enough. The photo's not good enough. Even if you really
I'm not good enough. Yeah. Like that's what it comes down to. So it's one of those things where because of the tone that's been set, that it's connected to us as people, I think that's what makes it actually toxic. So terrible. But I think there's the artistry to it. If you're doing it for you, that can be a really beautiful thing. But there's no world in which you can actually do that in a metrics driven system. Like it actually doesn't work. Like there's just a world where you can be truly authentically yourself, because we're social creatures. We compare ourselves. Like that's inherent to who we are. And numbers are just like such a bad way that manifests online.
Yeah, you're playing within the game that the by the rules that the platform creates, and that is based on metrics, and there's no way of escaping that.
And then look, we can talk down on social media as much as we want, but the fact is we're both here because of social media. Like there are obviously massive benefits to it. My entire brand, my entire podcast has grown through social media. So it's like you've got to find, as you mentioned, if you're a creator or if you're like a creative or an artist of some kind, then social media can be incredible. It's just, how does it apply to you? Managing your relationship with it, I think, because that whole thing I said about, posting, I don't know if people still do that. And if they do, I guess it's a little bit worrying. And that's where, you guys are trying to disrupt that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think a lot of brands and people that are doing and using Instagram as like a job, 100% are still doing that. I think they look at the metrics even more intensely probably now because the analytics are so strong. But I think we've gotten lost in like, not everyone wants to be a creator. Like we use that term on Instagram. I'm a creator. It's like, I'm a person and I want to share my life with the people I love. And I want to meet other people that I really get along with. And when we talk about, the power of the internet, it's the power to connect people. It's not the power to like show you this other person and make you feel like none of that is actually what the good is. And so that's really, I think, where we went wrong, and what we can course correct is not everyone wants to be a creator. Everyone has content that they want to share with the world and people that they want to connect with. And so let's focus on that instead of making it this game of content creation.
Yeah, I think and as you mentioned, it's all going back to your why and why you're doing this. But yeah, this has been really fun. I think there's been some really important conversations here. And before I get to the final question, I did just want to kind of link back to, I guess, less the social media side and more of like the business side of things. Like, how have you found, I guess, did you guys go to college and then you got a job in tech and then you started this business? How has that kind of journey been, and what have been the biggest struggles and learnings from that so far?
Our journeys were kind of different at the beginning. And even honestly, when we were starting to work on Herd, for me, we both went to Chapman. I studied public relations and advertising at the film school there, which was much more of a creative space, and then got a job at Google right after college in advertising consulting, and quickly realized I didn't really want to do the ad side of things, but stuck with it, played more of a consultant type role between advertising products and our largest customers at Google. And so really got a rundown in business and in how these systems worked. And then I started posting on my own TikTok page once I moved to Seattle, just talking about the algorithm, talking about how it worked, how you could use it as a creator, why your videos don't all do well, and what they're incentivizing. And that led me into a role still at Google, but at YouTube, doing shorts, the product go-to-market strategy. And that was a moment where I was like, okay, I really love working on a product and bringing something to life, but I want it to be about something that I really care about. I think the whole time that I was at Google, I learned so much and made amazing mentors and connections, but it was very clear that my why wasn't rooted in advertising and rooted in that ecosystem. It was much more rooted in people and connection.
Yeah, like Maddie said, I also went to Chapman and I studied business and communications. And then after college, was kind of lost. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And so I went into work in sales and advertising at Yelp. And then from there, kind of made a pivot to more the digital marketing side of things. Was working in-house at an agency for a while, and then pivoted to Google and was working in sales and advertising within Google. But similar to Maddie, my why was never rooted in that. Was really interested in health and wellness, and mental health, and just focusing on that on the side. I had a group on Facebook for healthy smoothie recipes because I loved making smoothies every day. So I had a group there just posting content that I enjoyed. And then also just during the pandemic, really got deep into like my own mental health journey. And so I think it's, been that balance of my professional life and figuring out what I was genuinely interested in and passionate about, and what got me excited to get out of bed and work on every day. And that was definitely heard, and not personalized advertising.
Because I think a lot of, and you'll probably, if you haven't already, you're probably going to get a lot of questions in the future asking like, how did you figure out what you wanted to do? How did you find your passion? Like, because you spoke about like, I liked Google and I liked these things, but I wasn't like lit up by what I was doing. And I feel like everyone is trying to find this kind of, that feeling of, I feel like I'm contributing and I'm actually doing something like that. Do you have any advice for like younger people out there who are struggling to find what they want to do?
Oh, yeah. I think like alleviating the when and how you have to figure it out. I think for especially like right when you're first starting your professional career, it's like everyone knows around me. Like no one actually knows what they're doing. No one has it figured out. I think for me, it was a real up and down journey. Like there were times where I was working my job and I'm like, I'm going to do this for the rest of my life. Like this is amazing. And there were days where I'm like, I'm feeling terrible. Like I can't do this for a day longer. But what caused a shift in my life was giving myself the space to reflect and looking at the people at my company 20 years older than me and asking myself genuinely, like, would I be happy if that was my life? They're amazing people. They live great lives. Like they're all happy. Not all of them, but like, the ones I was looking up to, like I was looking at these people who really felt empowered and in their stride in what they were doing 20 years after. And I was like, I don't see myself in that. I don't see myself being fulfilled, living kind of their life. And so that caused me to rethink. And then the bigger question for me at first was less about like, fixing social media. Like I would have never thought that that's what would have gotten me fired up, but I've always loved solving problems. And I've always loved making people feel like they can express themselves authentically. Like that's something I've always cared about. And so finding a way that I could combine both of those things happened with Herd, but I don't think it would have happened without a lot of moments of, oh my God, what am I doing? Is this what I want to be doing? And then alleviating that pressure from having to figure it out.
I think before we go to your answer, sorry, because I wanted to just point out something there, because it's such a common story you hear like that. I think a lot of people think that you need to have it planned, but as you said, how could you possibly plan Herd when you were like 19? It's like, it's not in the careers guidebook. There's no one telling you that. But how do you achieve that? You just head in the direction. And for you, that was solving problems. I'll solve problems here, then I'll solve problems here, then I'll solve problems here. And I'll just keep pushing towards that direction until eventually, bang, oh, this is a massive problem that I really want to solve. Let's build something around that. So that's something I think is quite important to understand. But yeah, did you want to share yours as well?
Yeah. I think for me, I mean, there's a lot of overlap with what Maddie said, and I completely agree with everything she said as well. But for me, it was really just creating the space to really like reflect on what it was that I was passionate about. And I mean, more importantly, what it was that I wasn't passionate about as well. Like I said, when I graduated, I had no idea what I wanted to do. I remember I had read this book on like sales and marketing, and I was like, oh, okay, like if I have those skills, then I can apply that anywhere. So I'll get a job doing this, figure out if I like it or not, get some experience here, and kind of pivot from there. So it was really just a lot of me trying something out, figuring out if I liked it or not, and then pivoting. And there were, to be honest, a lot of times where I felt like I just feel like I'm not finding what I'm passionate about, what I'm interested in, what I'm fulfilled by. And I felt really behind. Like, I think I was 3 years out of graduate, or 2 years, I don't even remember, but a couple years out of graduating. And I was like, so many people around me love what they're doing. They've gone to school for this their whole life, and they seem to have it all figured out. I think that's definitely kind of like a mind fuck. You have to, like, I don't know if I can say that word on here, but you have to get yourself out of that mindset, because really no one has it figured out. It's all really perception from, I mean, maybe some people do, but a perception from the outside, everyone saying, oh my God, I'm so happy in my career. I love what I'm doing. I just got promoted. And to not compare, I mean, it goes back to social media, not compare yourself to others and what they, you know, might be saying on the outside, because that's definitely so different than what might be going on inside. So I think something that was just honestly, I mean, kind of like a low point and a high point was the pandemic for me. It was definitely a large low for my mental health, but it really gave me the space to think about, you know, what I was doing and what I didn't want to be doing anymore. And I mean, like Maddie said, I never would have thought, oh yeah, I'm going to design an app and, you know, do this. I always loved entrepreneurs and listening to their stories. I absolutely love the podcast, How I Built This. I was like obsessed with it the year after I graduated. And I always knew I wanted to work for myself and be my own boss and not work for another company. But I had absolutely no idea what I wanted to do. I remember in job interviews, this is maybe a terrible answer to a job interview question, but people would ask like, oh, what do you want to do 5 years, 10 years down the line? And I was like, I don't know, but I'm going to be working for myself. Like, that's exactly what I want to be doing. And I didn't know how I would get there, but all the pieces kind of came together in the end, I guess.
I would have never said that I wanted to. That's what's so funny is like I would have literally never said that I wanted to work for myself. Now looking back, it makes a lot of sense, but follow what you enjoy learning.
Yeah.
I think if you're learning something, you're never in a bad position, even if you're learning that you don't like something.
Yeah.
So always felt like I wasn't learning anything, I would take that next job. Even if it was like, well, you haven't been in this job for 2 years, you should stay for 2 years. Like, forget all of the like status quo. The best way you can get to, I think, the root of it is, are you learning? And are you enjoying what you're learning? And is there more that you want to learn?
I think a key thing on that is just like being genuinely curious at what you do. If you're always curious in your job or whatever you're doing, like you're fulfilling the 6 human needs. I don't know if you've heard that concept, the 6 human needs.
No, I haven't.
It's like there's the 6 human needs. I don't know if I'll remember all of them, but it's like number 1 is variety. Number 2 is certainty. Number 3 is love and connection. Number 4 is growth, and then contribution, and then there's one other one, but I forgot it. And it's like, if you're just working a job that gives you money, you're not really getting any of the 6 human needs. But if you're genuinely curious, you're constantly, I'm sure you've got a lot of certainty with Herd, but you've got a hell of a lot of uncertainty. I'm sure you're contributing a lot because you're getting all these users on it. You're getting lots of growth because you're learning every day. And it's like, regardless of the money, that is fulfilling. That is what's going to make you want to keep doing what you're doing. And I guess what you could say is that is how you are successful, which again is subjective.
Yeah. Totally subjective, but I love that framing.
Yeah.
That's great.
I know, I've never heard that before. I really like that.
Yeah, Google it. It's pretty cool. It's a cool concept.
We will.
But anyways, before we wrap up, I ask every guest this question, and you can, do one each, but it's basically, what advice would you give to the younger generation? It can be anything, doesn't have to be social media related, but what is your number 1 piece of advice to someone who's like 16, 17, 18?
I would definitely say to the younger generation, take the risk. You're young, you have your whole life ahead of you. you might as well try. And if you fail, you fail, but you've got time in front of you to pick yourself back up and try again. I think something that's personally terrifying for me would be to live with regrets. I think I completely would have regretted not taking the leap into working on Herd full time, not pushing myself in, I don't know, whatever other aspect outside of Herd, but just in my personal life as well. But take that leap. You have time to figure it out if it doesn't work out the way it's, the way that you want it to. But then again, you never know. Maybe that the way it works out is in the end the way that it's supposed to.
I love that. And that's actually probably one of the most common answers, and in my opinion, the best answer. Like, taking risks while you're young is something I'm so passionate about. And the word you use there, regret. There's actually a woman in Australia who did a study and she interviewed people who were dying, like old people on their deathbed, and she came up with the top 5 regrets of the dying. And like the number 1 was, I wish I had the courage to live a life more true to myself rather than live a life others expected of me. And it's just like, that's such a powerful quote. So yeah, great answer.
That's so powerful. I couldn't agree more. I think from my side, it's like, appreciate where you're at now, because you can't get where you're going if you're not going through what you're going through now. I think personally, there were a lot of times in my life where I felt like I was never going to get where I wanted to be. And then there were a lot of times where I was where I wanted to be, and I felt like I still wasn't where I.
And you're not fulfilled.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I practice a lot now is actually like talking to my past and future self and thanking them for the work that they've put in and thanking them for all of the work that they're doing. And it sounds kind of hippy dippy, but I think it allows you to be appreciative for where you're at, because sometimes it's going to be really tough, and you have to know that that's going to be a part of your bigger journey, and never lose sight of where you're at and what you want to accomplish, but all that you've done to get to where you're at right now.
Wow. And I don't think that's hippy dippy. I think that's beautiful. There's actually, I've got a book coming out. There was 8 of us, and we all met up and we wrote a book. It's called 18 and Lost, So Were We. It's kind of 8 just everyday people giving advice to 18-year-old. And my mate Joe, at the end of his chapter, he does this really powerful part where he pretends he's talking to his 18-year-old self, and he says, "So Joe," and it's super powerful. I get like emotional. He's just like, "So Joe, did you end up being a filmmaker?" And he goes, "Oh no, I gave up on that 2 years after high school." And he goes, "Oh, what are you doing now?" "Oh, I'm doing this." And he goes, "Oh, why are we doing that?" And it's like, it's such an interesting exercise, and it's like really powerful, and just like reading that, especially because I know him as a person. So I think that's a really cool thing to do. Maybe you should add that in Herd if it's not there already.
Yeah. No, I love that. I think it's a great exercise. Everyone should practice it as soon as possible, and it'll always end up better than you expected. Even if it's
Awesome. Well, thank you girls so much for coming on the podcast. If people want to find out where you are, I have an international listeners, so I'm sure they can just, download the app right away. But is the best place to go just your website? I'll link everything below, but what's the best next, course of action for any listeners?
Yeah, our website is a great source of information. It's www.theherdapp.com. We also just post kind of funny content, how we're feeling on other platforms as well. But really, we're posting most of our, deepest thoughts on Herd. So I'm at Mads on Herd, which is MADS.
And I'm at Ali, ALI.
Pretty simple.
Yeah.
Got the good usernames early on.
Yeah, we made sure of that one.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. It was a pleasure to have you on here, and I'm really looking forward for when Herd comes to Australia.
We're looking forward to having you on the platform.
Yes.
Thank you for having us.
My pleasure.